Well, hello everyone, and welcome to one of the afternoon sessions that we're holding today regarding information and communication accessibility standards. And I'm Laurel, and I'm a staff member here at GEO Nova Scotia. And I'm really excited to introduce two guest panelists we have today. One is sitting right beside me, Carolyn. Could you pronounce your last name for me?
Kovesi.
Kovesi, thank you so very much. And virtually, we have Jeff Overmars, who's joining us as well. Wonderful, Jeff. And I'll get you both to introduce yourselves in a moment. I just want to take care of a little housekeeping thing that we have going on here. So, reminding everyone this is a hybrid event with a number of people in person and many more accessing us via Zoom. We're going to be drawing a prize during this session, but it won't be announced till the end of the day. But anyone who is here in person, there are QR codes you can take a picture of and to enter. And if you're joining us virtually, you'll all automatically be entered to this wonderful door prize that we have going on. And so I'm going to turn it over to Jeff for a moment. If you'd like to introduce yourself, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks so much, Laurel. It's Jeff Overmars here. Just going to jump right in, just knowing that how tight our presentation is, and may ask Carolyn to do her intro when we reach her portion, if that's okay.
Works for me. Wonderful.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks so much to GEO Nova Scotia for the opportunity to share a bit about the work of the Information and Communication Standard Development Committee. My name is Jeff Overmars. I'm the SDC chair, and I'm pleased to be here today with committee member Carolyn Kovesi, who you'll hear from shortly. Our time together is brief, so I'll dive right in with a bit of background and hope that your curiosity will be piqued enough to have you seek a bit more information afterwards. Many of you will have heard that Nova Scotia has the highest rate of disability in Canada. 37.9% of Nova Scotians identify as having a disability compared to 25% of Canadians. This rate of disability means simply that a significant portion of our population experience barriers to inclusion in a society historically built to meet the needs of the able-bodied. Next slide. Like so many movements for inclusion, be it racial or gender equity, the movement for gay and trans rights, the pursuit of truth and reconciliation, much of the progress we've seen in advancing inclusion for people with disabilities has been championed by community members. After decades of calls for action from community to enshrine accessibility and inclusion into law, the government of Nova Scotia introduced a bill for first reading at the legislature on November 2nd of 2016, almost 9 years ago. There were concerns at the time from the broader disability community that it lacked first voice input and would not serve to advance accessibility in a meaningful way for persons with disabilities. Enter the Bill 59 Community Alliance, a group of advocates that formed a single voice for persons with disabilities in Nova Scotia. It was supported by 35 organizations representing all forms of disability. The province of Nova Scotia invited the Alliance to help draft the Nova Scotia Accessibility Act. This is the first time such a collaborative legislative drafting process has been undertaken in this province. Next slide. This is a photo of members of the Bill 59 Community Alliance, taken at the 2017 Nova Scotia Human Rights Awards ceremony, where they were honored for their work for advancing human rights in the province. Next slide. Through the leadership of community members, Nova Scotia's Accessibility Act was passed into law in 2017. Nova Scotia was the third province in Canada at the time with accessibility legislation after Ontario and Manitoba. A key aspect of Nova Scotia's Act is that it reaffirms accessibility as a human right. And it sets out that accessibility will be achieved by preventing and removing the barriers that prevent people with disabilities from fully participating in all aspects of life in our province. The Act embeds the principle of nothing about us without us in every aspect of this work. No policy should be decided by any representative without the full and direct participation of members of the group affected by that policy. The Act established new entities, requirements, and also enabled government to take action. It created the Accessibility Directorate the staff inside government that implements the Act, and also created the Accessibility Advisory Board to provide advice to the Minister of Justice, including recommendations on accessibility standards. It also set out new requirements for government to develop and implement a strategy for the Act and develop an accessibility plan, and to prescribe public sector bodies and develop accessibility standards. Next slide. The Accessibility Act enables government to develop accessibility standards, and this is critical to the foundation of what an accessible Nova Scotia looks like. Because accessibility standards are regulations, the rules that tell government, organizations, and businesses what they must do. The development of standards in 6 different areas will provide the legislative and regulatory framework for an accessible province. Standards will apply to government, prescribed public sector bodies, and other sectors such as healthcare and the private sector. The first standard to be enacted as regulation is the built environment, which took effect earlier this year. Next slide. The standard development process is about a 3 to 5 year process. Some highlights of the process are that the Accessibility Advisory Board makes recommendations to the minister regarding standard development. The board establishes standard development committees to assist in making the recommendations. The SDC's draft standard recommendations. This is where we're at now. Draft recommendations go out for public consultation. Watch for that in the coming months. The SDC revises recommendations based on feedback received from the public. Then the advisory board approves and submits as recommended standards to the minister. Next slide. Government will then review the recommendations and develop accessibility standards as regulations. Once again, those draft regulations will be posted for public input. Once finalized, these recommendations will then be submitted to Cabinet and enacted into regulation and become law. Next slide. Members of the Information and Communication Standard Development Committee come from across Nova Scotia, representing experience and expertise in related areas, and most identify as persons with disabilities. The recommendations will result in a standard to help ensure everyone can receive, understand, and share the information that they need. This includes addressing communication barriers that exist digitally, in print, or through interactions with technology or people. Information and communication is the 6th standard area to be developed under the Accessibility Act, following the built environment, education, employment, goods and services, and public transportation. The Information and Communication SDC is exploring recommendations related to digital accessibility, like accessible web content, accessible formats, communication services, sign language and visual access to language, and wayfinding and signage. Next slide. Finally, and before I hand it over to Carolyn to whet your appetites with some practical applications of this work, I'd like to speak about the interaction between digital inclusion and removing barriers to access. Digital inclusion ensures everyone can participate in the modern world by having access to the internet, digital tools, and technology. For persons with disabilities, this inclusion is inseparable from removing digital barriers. Things like websites that can't be navigated by screen readers, videos without captions, or software that can't be used without a mouse. When digital inclusion is prioritized, it means designing and maintaining technology in ways that meet accessibility standards from the start. Readable fonts, alt text for images, keyboard navigation, and adaptive hardware support. This doesn't just open access to online services or information, it restores agency, allowing people with disabilities to communicate, learn, work, and engage in civic life on equal terms. In short, digital inclusion is the goal, and removing barriers to accessibility is the work that makes this goal real. Each depends on the other. Thanks very much. I know that was a lot of information covered really quickly. Please reach out, or if there's time for questions afterwards, I'd be happy to address them. Without further ado, I'll pass it over to Carolyn. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. And yes, we will hand it over to Carolyn now.
Hello, my name is Carolyn, like Jeff just said. I use the pronouns she and her, and I'm a digital accessibility consultant and educator. So today I thought I'd just give you a couple practical tips with a little case study about how we could remove some of these barriers to disabled folks using and being online. So the little case study today will be using screen readers. And a screen reader is a kind of technology that converts everything on a screen, whether that be your phone screen, your computer screen, an Apple Watch, into either oral speech that someone can hear or Braille that they can feel on a refreshable Braille display. So screen readers are often used by folks who are low vision and blind, but they're also used by other disabled communities, including folks who have learning disabilities or people prone to migraines. Unlike just text-to-speech, a screen reader doesn't just read out text, it tells its user everything that's present on the screen so they know what they can do and what will happen if they click on different things. So it'll let people know that there are links, that there's text, that there are images present, etc. And this allows screen reader users to navigate in a way that's more efficient than just listening to or feeling an entire chunk of text. So for example, a screen reader user might listen to all of the headings on a page, and that tells them what kind of content they can expect to find on that page without having to listen to all the content in between the headers. They might also listen to a list of links or hyperlinks to tell them what kind of information they can get further from this page. And that's what we're going to talk about today, or one of a couple examples. So hyperlinks are clickable text that take you somewhere else. So it can either take you to another web page, it can download a file, open your email, if it's linked to an email address, etc. And when I talk about hyperlinks, I'm talking about specifically the text that is clickable. It's usually in another color and underlined. That's what constitutes the hyperlink. So I'll let someone else explain this now.
Imagine if someone read out your website to you. When they reach a link, they read out, link, read more. You want to move faster, so they skip to the next link, link, click here. And the next, link, see more. Wait, what? Where do these links go? People who use screen readers experience this all the time. Think about it. Without the context of the surrounding text, these links could lead anywhere, particularly if they're used multiple times and linked to different destinations. The easiest way to fix this is by adding context to your link text. Take this sentence, for example.
And that's good there. Thank you so much. So we just learned a little bit about ambiguous hyperlinks, and now to really drive this home, I'm going to give you an example of a screen reader reading a pretty inaccessible website. And it's someone who's navigating just by listening to the links on the page, so without all the text in between those links. And you'll hear them read the screen reader read one or two distinct links, and then you're going to hear a whole bunch of links that are identical and make it really difficult to know which one you want to click on.
Our website's accessibility. Clip here, clip here, clip here, clip here, clip here. Look at how this page should have been designed.
I apologize, there were captions if they were turned on YouTube. I don't know if you want to replay it. It just had click here said repeatedly. My apologies. The other two videos in this are ones that are embedded and do have captions. So if you had just listened to click here, click here, click here, would you know which here you wanted to click on to get to more information of a specific type? You wouldn't. No one would. So the fix for this is descriptive hyperlinks. So on the wrong page. A descriptive hyperlink tells a user where they're going to be taken when they click on that link. They're very specific and they make sense out of context. So if you haven't heard or read the sentence preceding the hyperlink, you would still know what was going to happen, what you would learn if you were going to click on that link. So and descriptive hyperlinks can be used on a variety of things, including documents, websites, and also emails. So hopefully after this little lesson, you will start applying these in your documents and websites and emails. So how do we write these things? First of all hyperlinks should be unique. All hyperlinks on a page are ideally going to different things, and so the text of those hyperlinks should reflect that. And you also want to keep things succinct. One tip is to link to nouns. So for example, say you're linking to your annual report, you could make the hyperlink the title of that annual report. In other instances, it can be helpful to add a verb in there that tells you specifically what's going to happen. So for example, I might have the hyperlink text subscribe to our newsletter. And that tells me when I click on that, I'm going to get to a subscription page. As opposed to if just the word newsletter was hyperlinked, maybe if I click that, I would get taken to a page with past newsletters, for example. You don't want to use a full URL. It gets really tedious to hear http:// yeah. And sometimes this requires a little creativity, a little rewording of the sentences. And so being open to that is important. So we'll give you a couple examples here. My first sentence is learn more about how GEO Nova Scotia programs help get everyone online. And the hyperlink text is currently just learn more. So if I were to hear that without the text around it, if I was just listening to hyperlinks, I'd only know learn more. About what? So a better alternative would be to make the hyperlink text GEO Nova Scotia programs. For a second example, and to get us ready, if we could get the mic prepared to run around, that'd be great. I have the text visit and then a whole URL, geonovascotia.ca, blah, 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 to read more. And instead of that, because that would be really annoying to listen to letter by letter, I could maybe say read more about, and then for the hyperlinked text, say the name of that page it was taking us to, which is the GEO Connects program. And now everyone is super lucky because you get to practice this because it's really important to me that people feel accessible communications are doable. So I have a lovely photo here of my favorite tortoise, who is Gus from the Museum of Natural History, walking across a manhole on one of his daily walks. And I have the question, how would you fix the hyperlink in the sentence to make it descriptive? What specific words would you hyperlink, or how would you reword the sentence? The sentence is, learn more about how you can join Gus on one of his daily walks. And I cannot see the folks online, so I encourage you to submit your answers in the chat, and maybe Jeff can give you some feedback there. But for our folks here in person, if someone would like to answer, it would be very much appreciated. Yay.
I would make the hyperlink how you can join Gus.
Yeah, absolutely. That would tell you how you could join Gus. Another option might be to reword the sentence and say Gus takes daily walks and make a hyperlink join Gus on a walk. Or if you wanted to keep the sentence the same, you could say join Gus on one of his daily walks. But either way, that would be fantastic. So we're all going to use descriptive hyperlinks now everywhere. And moving, I had another example in case we had time, which we don't. I'm going to give you two other little mini case studies here from social media. I'm a social media accessibility gal, so this is my happy place. And if you have questions about this, I'm happy to talk about it afterwards. But let's talk for a second about emojis. So every emoji, something that you might not know, has a pre-assigned description. If you know alt text, it's kind of like alt text, but you can't change it. And many of these descriptions might be different than the ones that you would expect. For example, I have a photo of a hand doing the rock on sign emoji, but what is actually read out by a screen reader whenever it comes across this emoji is sign of the horns. Really weird, right? Not what you'd expect. So keeping this in mind, it's important to use emojis in moderation. So max 2 or 3 emojis. It's also important to put them at the end of a sentence or the end of a caption or comment so that it doesn't interrupt the flow. And in a similar vein, it is super important not to use emojis as replacements for words, in between words, or as bullet points, because of those pre-assigned descriptions, it can completely change the meaning of your sentences, also obscure the meaning, and just break up the flow. So I have an example here that is captioned of what happens when we don't follow these best practices.
Caro_in_public thinking face. Did you know? Full stop. Face with open eyes and mouth with head exploding. Some people hear but don't see emojis. Woman making a cross sign with her arms. This makes using emojis as bullet points confusing and frustrating for screen reader users. Red double exclamation mark. As is using sparkles. Emojis sparkles. Between words. Using winking face with stuck out tongue. To replace input symbol for letters. Can change the meaning of your page with curl. Full stop. Thanks for ear.
And hopefully we are no longer going to be putting emojis all over the place. And now imagine what that would sound like if you had like 20 of those red exclamation marks in a row and it was reading every single one. We're also going to use our emojis in moderation. And my last little example here involves hashtags. If anyone here is a coder, you might immediately pick up on this being Pascal case, not camel case, but we're going with what is colloquially used here. So camel case refers to capitalizing the first letter of each new word in a given thing, like a hashtag, and capitalizing all letters of an acronym. This allows a screen reader to distinguish different words so that it doesn't jumble them together and smush a sentence into one word. It also makes it easier to read visually. And fun fact, this applies not just to hashtags, but also to social media handles, to website URLs, to emails, so you can capitalize the first letter of your first name and last name to make it easier to read. And to conclude us, I have an example of a screen reader that's going to demonstrate what it sounds like when you don't use camel case with hashtags, and then the exact same tweet will be read with camel case applied to those hashtags.
Caro Kovesi. Not using camel case. Hashtag accessibility for Reverion. Hashtag accessibility matters. Hashtag screen reader user scare. Hashtag inclusivity signal line. 2 minutes ago. 3 views. Caro Kovesi. Using camel case. Hashtag accessibility for everyone. Hashtag accessibility matters. Hashtag screen reader users care. Hashtag inclusive design online.
And so now we'll all capitalize the first letter of each new word in our hashtags. And that brings me to the end. I have an image here from the RNIB that says accessibility is a love note. It says, we want you here too. That's definitely how I feel when I see digital accessibility online. If you have questions, feedback, I would love to be in touch. My email is Carolyn, spelled Caroline, I-N-E, K-O-V like Victor, E-S-I @gmail.com. And I'm available for accessibility workshops, resource development, consultation, you name it. And I'm also going to stick around after for questions in person, sorry folks online, if there are questions that go over time. Thank you. One question.
Actually, I was just going to ask if you could go back one slide. Thank you.
Are there any questions online?
Don't see any, Carolyn.
Well, thank you so much then to GEO Nova Scotia for inviting us.
Yes, and I want to thank our hosts or our panelists today, Carolyn and Jeff, very much for being here today and explaining about this very important movement that's happening in this province around accessibility. And I'd like to add, when you make something accessible, it makes it accessible for everybody. That's the cool part about accessibility, is that it doesn't just make it accessible for those that may have a disability, it makes it accessible for everybody.
I'm going to add one thing to that.
Yes.
Which is sometimes it's pretty intimidating to get started with digital accessibility because there's just so much information. But the thing is, you can't make things worse by trying to make them more accessible. So even if you only take one tip and start applying it, that starts making the digital world a little more accessible, and it's better than nothing. So it's a great place to start.
Yes, thank you very much. And I'd like to thank the attendees that are in person and those that are here virtually. Reminder as well to enter into the chance to win a prize today. So thank you very much for attending this session.